My husband stood under the spotlights, raising a glass of champagne as the cameras flashed. He looked perfect. The charcoal suit I'd tailored for him, the watch I'd gifted him, the smile I'd spent 10 years protecting. Jeffrey Mercer, the car king of Austin, unveiling his masterpiece, the fully restored Phantom Corsair. The crowd gasped as the silk cover slid off the car. It was sleek, black, menacingly beautiful. A $1 million machine brought back from the dead. I stood 20 feet away, in the shadows near the kitchen door. I wasn't wearing a gown. I was wearing black slacks and a white button-down because Jeffrey had told me the catering staff was short a server and he needed me to pitch in for the team. So there I was, Rain Mercer, wife, partner. And tonight, apparently, the help. I watched him bask in the applause. I waited for him to mention the nights I'd spent sourcing the original engine parts from a scrapyard in Italy. I waited for him to mention the 3 months I'd spent hand-polishing the chrome because the shop team had quit. Instead, he turned to the woman standing next to him. Abigail. 26 years old, blonde, glowing in a red dress that cost more than my first car. She was his new PR director. Or at least, that was the title on her business card. I couldn't have done this alone, Jeffrey said, his voice booming through the microphone. To Abigail, my muse, my partner, the vision behind the brand, this night belongs to you. He pulled her close. She laughed, that tinkling, practiced laugh, and rested her head on his shoulder. The crowd cheered, and just like that, 10 years of grease, sweat, and blood were erased. I wasn't just unappreciated, I was invisible. I looked down at the tray of champagne in my hands. The condensation was cold against my fingers. I didn't throw it. I didn't scream. I just set the tray down on a side table, turned around, and walked out the back door into the humid Texas night. Have you ever felt like you were screaming in a room full of people, but no one could hear you? Drop a comment below with where you're watching from, and let me know if you've ever felt invisible in your own life. I retreated to the only place that felt like mine. The back office. It was a small, windowless room behind the showroom floor, smelling of stale coffee and engine oil. The music from the party thumped against the walls like a heartbeat, but in here, it was quiet. I sat down at my desk and looked at the framed photo of my grandfather. He wasn't wearing a suit, he was covered in grease, holding a wrench, smiling like he knew the secrets of the universe. Most people thought I was just Jeffrey's wife. A lucky girl who'd snagged a rich husband. His mother, Patricia, liked to tell her bridge club that I was a shop girl with ambitious eyes. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that before there was a showroom, before there was a car king, there was just me and a toolbox. My grandfather used to tell me, Rain, listen close. Some cars shine because of the paint, some shine because of the engine. The paint gets the attention, but the engine gets you home. Never confuse the two. Jeffrey was the paint. He was charcoal suits and teeth whitening and firm handshakes. He could sell a rusted frame to a collector for 6 figures just by telling a story about its history. But I was the engine. For 10 years, I was the one waking up at 3 in the morning to bid on rare parts from suppliers in Tokyo. I was the one crawling through junkyards in the heat of July, looking for a specific door handle for a 1957 Chevy. I was the one negotiating with mechanics who didn't want to listen to a woman, forcing them to respect me by diagnosing engine knocks they couldn't hear. The empire wasn't built on Jeffrey's charm. It was built on my sweat, but I stayed in the shadows. Why? Because Jeffrey told me that clients trusted a man more. He said the brand needed a strong, masculine face. He said we were a team, he was the front, I was the back. And I believed him. Looking back, I realize I was living inside a prison without bars. Psychologists call it learned helplessness, but I call it the invisible chain of the survivor. It's that voice in your head that tells you you're lucky just to be allowed in the room. I thought I was protecting my grandfather's legacy by keeping the business alive. I convinced myself that being the invisible backbone was a noble sacrifice. I told myself that without Jeffrey, no one would buy the cars I restored. I thought I needed him to give my work value. I was wrong. The engine doesn't need the paint to run. The paint needs the engine to move. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a thick leather binder. It contained the real history of this company. Every VIN number, every invoice, Every hour of labor I'd never been paid for. Jeffrey thought this was just paperwork. He thought I was just handling the books while he handled the glory. I ran my hand over the leather cover. Outside, the party was getting louder. I could hear glasses clinking and laughter rising. They were celebrating a hollow victory. I wasn't the shop girl. I wasn't the lucky wife. I was the mechanic's granddaughter, and I was starting to realize that it was time to stop fixing someone else's machine and start building my own. The morning sun hit the quartz countertop, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a beautiful Tuesday, the kind of day you'd usually spend planning the week's inventory or tracking down a rare carburetor. Jeffrey was sitting at the island, wearing his silk robe, drinking the espresso I'd just made him. He looked refreshed. He looked like a man with a plan. He didn't say good morning. He just slid a manila envelope across the marble. It stopped inches from my hand. "I want a divorce," he said. His tone was casual, like he was ordering lunch. "And I want it done quickly. Abigail and I have a lot of press lined up for the next quarter, and I need the brand to be unencumbered." I stared at the envelope. I didn't open it. "Unencumbered? I'm keeping the showroom," he said, ticking items off on his fingers. "The brand rights, the property, and the entire vintage collection. Including the warehouse inventory." The warehouse inventory? My voice was steady, even though my pulse was hammering in my throat. "That includes the Shelby I spent 2 years restoring. The one my grandfather left me the chassis for. It's a company asset, Rain," he said, taking a sip of his coffee. "Don't get emotional. You have no head for business. You never did. You're a worker bee, not a queen. You're a liability to the image I'm building. A liability. The woman who balanced the books at midnight was a liability. The woman who kept the lenders at bay with nothing but charm and creative accounting was a liability. I've already spoken to my lawyer," he continued. "You'll get a small settlement. Enough to get an apartment, maybe start a little hobby shop. But the empire stays with me." Before I could answer, the front door opened. Patricia, my mother-in-law, swept in. She wasn't wearing her usual bridge club pastels. She was wearing a sharp black suit, like she was attending a funeral she was looking forward to. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how I was. She walked straight to the hallway closet and pulled out a stack of flat cardboard boxes. "I'm here to supervise the packing," she announced. "We don't want any confusion about what belongs to the house." "You're kicking me out?" I asked, looking from her to Jeffrey. "This is my house. My name is on the deed." "For now," Jeffrey said. "But you'll sign it over. Unless you want a long, expensive court battle that will leave you with nothing." Patricia began folding the throw blankets I'd knitted. "It's for the best, Rain. Honestly, we're doing you a favor." "A favor?" She paused, offering me a pitying smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've already spoken to the girls at the club. We told them about your episodes." My blood ran cold. "What episodes?" "The stress," she said smoothly. "We told everyone you've been mentally unstable for months. Paranoid, bad with money, that you're having a breakdown, and Jeffrey is trying to protect the business from your erratic behavior." It was a whisper campaign. While I was in the garage fixing engines, they were at country clubs and galas, methodically dismantling my reputation. They had isolated me before I even knew I was in a fight. If I fought back now, I wouldn't look like a victim. I'd look like the crazy ex-wife they'd already warned everyone about. "You should be grateful," Patricia said, dropping a stack of books into a box. "Jeffrey is being very generous considering how unstable you are." I looked at Jeffrey. He was scrolling on his phone, likely texting Abigail. He wasn't even watching. He had discarded me like a used oil filter. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I realized in that moment that arguing with them was like trying to reason with a thunderstorm. They didn't operate on logic or empathy. They operated on power. "Fine," I said. Jeffrey looked up, surprised. "Fine? I'll pack," I said. "I'll leave." He smiled, relieved. He thought he had won. I walked to my bedroom, stepping over the boxes Patricia had thrown on the floor. I wasn't packing my life away. I was clearing the deck. Because they were right about one thing, I was done being a liability. I was about to become their worst nightmare. I didn't go to a friend's house. I didn't go to a hotel. I drove 15 miles out of town, to the Starlight Motel, a place where the neon sign buzzed louder than the traffic. It was cheap, anonymous, and exactly what I needed. My son, Benjamin, was already there. I'd texted him to meet me after school. At 15, he was quiet, observant, and hated the showroom almost as much as I did. He was sitting on the edge of the lumpy mattress, his laptop open, the blue light reflecting in his glasses. "They kicked you out," he stated. It wasn't a question. "They tried," I said, dropping my single suitcase by the door. I left. Benjamin turned his laptop around. "Good." I sat down next to him. On the screen was a spreadsheet. But not just any spreadsheet, it was a floor plan audit. Benjamin had spent the last 3 months optimizing the inventory system for Jeffrey. What he'd actually been doing was digging. "Mom, look at the VIN numbers," he pointed. "Look at the financing codes." I scanned the columns. My eyes widened. Every single car in the showroom, the Ferraris, the Mustangs, even the unfinished projects in the back, had a lien against it. "He didn't buy them outright?" I whispered. "No," Benjamin said. "He's using hard money loans. High interest, short term. He's leveraging the cars to pay for the building, leveraging the building to pay for the restoration parts, and leveraging the parts to pay for Abigail." I scrolled down. The numbers were staggering. "Total asset value on paper, $3 million, Benjamin read. "Total liability tied to assets, $4.2 million. The room spun. Jeffrey wasn't just broke. He was underwater. He was drowning in an ocean of debt, so deep the pressure would crush a submarine. "How is he still operating?" I asked. "He's cycling the loans," Benjamin explained. "Paying off one credit line with another. It's a Ponzi scheme with hubcaps. And Mom, look at the personal guarantee clause." I leaned in. "Guarantor accepts full personal liability for all debts upon transfer of title." I sat back, staring at the peeling wallpaper. A strange, cold calm washed over me. Jeffrey wasn't fighting me for his empire. He was fighting me for his debt. He just didn't know it. He saw the shiny cars, the showroom, the brand. He saw the paint job. He didn't see the engine seizing up underneath. This is what psychologists call the illusion of power in an empty wallet. It's a specific kind of narcissism, where the ability to borrow money feels exactly like having money. Jeffrey believed his own hype so completely that he couldn't do basic math. He thought he could grow his way out of a $4 million hole just by being charming. "He wants everything," I said, a smile slowly forming on my face. "He demanded the showroom, the inventory, the brand rights." "He wants the debt," Benjamin corrected. "Exactly." I looked at my son. He wasn't scared. He was grinning. "Can you print this?" I asked. "Already did. 3 copies, plus a backup on a secure drive." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked different. The fear was gone, the hurt was gone. All that was left was the mechanics of the problem. Jeffrey wanted to be the king. He wanted the crown. Fine, I would give him the crown. I'd just make sure it was made of lead. I hired Elena purely on reputation. She was known in Austin legal circles as the Scalpel. She didn't shout, she didn't pound tables, she just cut you open before you realized you were bleeding. I sat in her glass-walled office, the floor plan audit resting between us like a loaded gun. "You have leverage," Elena said, tapping the spreadsheet. "We can use this to force a fair split. Half the cash value, alimony, child support." "No," I said. "I don't want half. Half of a sinking ship just means I drown slower." Elena frowned. "Then what do you want?" "I want him to take it all." I pushed a piece of paper across the desk. I'd drafted it myself the night before at the motel. "I want you to write this up legally. It's a liability assumption agreement. It states that in exchange for full ownership of the brand, the inventory, and the real estate, Jeffrey assumes sole, absolute, and irrevocable responsibility for all associated debts." Elena read my notes. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "You want to give him the assets?" "I want to give him the anchor," I corrected. "He thinks these are assets. He thinks he's fighting for the crown jewels. If I fight him for them, his ego will make him fight harder. But if I surrender? If I tell him he's right, That he's the genius, and I'm just the baggage? He'll sign anything to get me out of the room. Elena stared at me for a long beat. Then, a slow, terrifying smile spread across her face. You're not looking for a settlement, Rain. You're looking for an execution. I just want to be unencumbered, I said, using Jeffrey's own word. The mediation took place 3 days later. Jeffrey brought Abigail. Of course he did. She sat next to him, whispering in his ear, looking at me with a mixture of pity and triumph. I wore a gray cardigan that was 2 sizes too big. I kept my head down. I let my hands tremble when I reached for the water glass. I played the part of the defeated wife so well I almost annoyed myself. We're prepared to offer $75,000, Jeffrey's lawyer said. A lump sum. In exchange for a complete waiver of interest in the business. $75,000. For 10 years of my life. For the millions I generated. It was an insult designed to make me scream. I didn't scream. I nodded meekly. I'll take it, I whispered. Jeffrey blinked. He looked disappointed. He wanted a fight. He wanted to crush me. My surrender robbed him of his climax. But, I added, sliding the document Elena had prepared across the table, I need you to sign this. Since you're keeping the business, I need my name off the credit lines. I'm renting an apartment. I can't have your business loans showing up on my credit report. Jeffrey laughed. He picked up the document, barely glancing at the text. It was dense, boring, legal jargon about debt assumption and indemnification. She's worried about her credit score, Jeffrey said to Abigail, loud enough for me to hear. Small thinking. That's why she never fit in this world. It's standard protection, Elena said, her voice bored. If you're the sole owner, you're the sole debtor. It's what you wanted, isn't it? Total control? That was the trigger. Total control. Jeffrey didn't even look at his lawyer. He didn't ask for a review. He just wanted to impress Abigail. He wanted to show her how decisive he was, how easily he handled the help. He uncapped his fountain pen, a Mont Blanc I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary, and signed the document with a flourish. There, he said, sliding it back. You're free, Rain. Go open your hobby shop. Leave the Empire building to the adults. I looked at his signature. The ink was still wet. He thought he had just signed the deed to a kingdom. He didn't know he had just signed a confession to $4 million of fraud and accepted personal liability for every cent of it. I stood up, clutching my check for $75,000 like it was a lifeline. Thank you, Jeffrey, I said softly. I walked out of the conference room, my head bowed. But the moment the heavy oak doors clicked shut behind me, I straightened my spine. I didn't feel sad. I felt the way a mechanic feels when they tighten the final bolt on a perfect engine. Everything was in place. Now, all I had to do was turn the key. The final hearing was a formality. Or at least, that's what Jeffrey thought. We were back in the same courtroom, the air thick with the smell of floor wax and impending judgment. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, was flipping through the settlement agreement. Jeffrey was already celebrating. He leaned back in his chair, shooting a wink at Abigail, who was sitting in the gallery looking bored. He had his empire. He had his freedom. He had signed the liability assumption agreement without a second thought, convinced that the assets he was keeping, specifically the cars, outweighed the debt 10-1. Mr. Mercer, the judge said, you are assuming sole responsibility for all debts listed in Exhibit C. You understand that this includes the floor plan financing and the private loans? I do, Your Honor, Jeffrey said, his voice smooth. I'm fully capable of managing my business. He looked at me. It was a look of pure condescension. Poor Rain, walking away with pennies. Very well. The judge raised her gavel. I am prepared to sign. One moment, Your Honor. Elena stood up. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a diamond cutter. Jeffrey's lawyer sighed loudly. What now? We have a deal. We do, Elena said. However, my client has a duty of candor to the court. We need to make a correction to the asset description on Schedule A. Specifically, the item listed as the 1,938 Phantom Corsair prototype. Jeffrey laughed. She wants the car? It's too late. It's the centerpiece of the collection. No, Elena said. She doesn't want it. She just wants to clarify that it is listed as an original prototype valued at $1.2 million. Because it is, Jeffrey snapped. I stood up. I didn't look at the judge. I looked straight at Jeffrey. It's a kit car, Jeffrey. The room went silent. The kind of silence that happens right before a car crash. Excuse me? Jeffrey's lawyer asked. It's a replica, I said clearly. I built it myself 4 years ago. The chassis is from a 1996 Chevy Caprice I bought at a police auction for $500. The body is fiberglass and Bondo. The engine isn't a Lycoming V8. It's a crate motor from a junkyard in Dallas. Jeffrey's face went slack. You're lying. I've driven it. It's perfect. It drives perfectly because I'm a good mechanic, I said. But it has no VIN number matching the original. It has no provenance. It is not an asset worth $1 million. It is a toy worth maybe $10,000. On a good day, I watched the realization hit him. It wasn't just about the car, the loans. Your financing, Elena said, turning to Jeffrey's lawyer, is secured by the appraised value of the inventory. Specifically, that car was the primary collateral for your hard money loan. Jeffrey's lawyer turned the color of old milk. He started flipping frantically through his files. He knew what I knew. He knew that loan agreements have a breach of collateral clause. If the asset securing the loan is proven to be worthless, the loan isn't just due next month. It is in default immediately. If that car is a replica, the lawyer whispered, his voice trembling, the loan is unsecured. The lender can call the entire note today. $4.2 million, I said softly. Due immediately. And since you signed the personal guarantee, they can't take the car. It's worthless. They'll have to take everything else. Jeffrey stood up, knocking his chair over. You set me up. This is entrapment. It's disclosure, I said. You never asked for the authentication papers. You just liked how shiny the paint was. The judge looked over her glasses. Mr. Mercer, sit down. Is the petitioner's statement true? Jeffrey looked at me. He looked for the terrified, submissive wife he'd known for 10 years. She wasn't there. I didn't know, he stammered. You should have looked under the hood, I said. The judge stamped the decree. The sound echoed like a gunshot. It was over. He had the crown, the kingdom, and the debt. And I had the only thing that mattered, the truth. The collapse wasn't a slow leak. It was a blowout at 90 miles an hour. Within 48 hours of the hearing, the hard money lenders descended on the showroom like vultures. Since the primary collateral, the Phantom Corsair, was proven worthless, they called in every loan simultaneously. Jeffrey didn't have the cash. He didn't even have the down payment. I heard through the grapevine that tow trucks lined up around the block. They stripped the showroom bare. The Ferraris, the Mustangs, the vintage signs on the walls, they took it all. Abigail didn't stick around to watch the empire fall. The moment the company credit card was declined at a spa in Dallas, she packed her bags. She posted a quote on social media about outgrowing people who don't share your vibration, and vanished. And Patricia? She called me 3 weeks later. Rain, she sobbed into the phone. They're taking the lake house. Jeffrey is sleeping on my couch. You have to help us. We're family. I stood in the center of my new shop, wiping grease from my hands with a rag. The sun was streaming through the open bay doors. Family protects each other, Patricia, I said calmly. You packed my life into garbage bags and told the world I was crazy. You aren't family, you're a liability. I hung up. I blocked the number. I didn't open a hobby shop. I used my savings, the $850,000 I'd protected, to buy an old warehouse on the edge of town. I retrofitted it with top-of-the-line lifts and diagnostic computers. I called it the engine room. It isn't a showroom. There are no velvet ropes, no champagne trays, no men in suits taking credit for work they didn't do. It's a collective. I teach women how to repair their own cars, how to restore vintage engines, and how to negotiate with mechanics who try to overcharge them. I looked around the shop floor. Benjamin was over by the dyno machine, teaching a young girl how to read torque specs. He was laughing. He was free. I want to speak directly to you for a second. To the person watching this who feels like they are standing in the shadows, holding a tray while someone else takes the bow. To the person who keeps the books, fixes the leaks, and holds the family together while being told they aren't ambitious enough. I know how heavy that invisibility feels. I know you think that if you just work harder, if you just polish the chrome a little brighter, they will finally see you. They won't. They love the paint job because it's shiny. They love the exterior because it makes them look good. But they don't understand the engine. They don't understand that without you, the whole machine is just a heavy pile of scrap metal. Don't wait for them to give you permission to exist. Don't wait for them to hand you the keys to a car you built. Take your tools, take your talent, and walk out the door. You are not the background character in their movie. You are the engine of your own life. And engines are designed to run, so start it up, put it in gear, and don't ever look back at the people who left you in the dust. If this story revved your engine, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to know they are the engine, not just the paint.